All right, well, we will go ahead, kick off today's Talk with Doc. Thank you for everyone showing up. Today's Talk with Doc is on back to school, IEPs and more. As we are trying to get back to school, so much is going on, and we just want to take a minute. We've got our SOAR, at least part of our SOAR advisory team with us, and our great think tank here. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of get into things. One thing I do want to share as we're going here, if anyone has questions, please go ahead and you can put them in the chat or the Q&A on here. If we get our live going on Facebook, you can put them in the chat on Facebook as well, and we will get to that. But with that, let me hand off to our newest member of the team, Christina Bundy. She's our new activities director here. Very happy to have her with us. But Christina, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm the new activities director. I have pursued a degree in education and psychology. So I had a ton of experience doing IEP advocation for my parents and families that I worked with, and then became a parent of a special needs kiddo. I have one who is on the spectrum and has some medical concerns, so have now extensive personal interactions within the IEP areas of working with school districts as well. Oh.
Awesome. Eileen, thank you for joining us. You go ahead, introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Eileen Jimenez Morales, and I am one member of the board of directors for SOAR. Been involved with SOAR ministries on a number of different levels, volunteering on the board, and I also have some kiddos who access some of the services that SOAR provides. I am also an attorney by training, but an advocate at heart, owner of Advocate at Heart Consulting Services that helps individuals with disabilities and their families navigate services. And of course, the area of special education, and advocacy is a very common topic that I encounter in that capacity. So I'm happy to be here today. The timing is excellent. We're all gearing up, good, bad, or indifferent, for back to school. So look forward to sharing whatever it is we can to help everybody make the most of another school year.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, like Eileen said, we are all getting ready for back to school. Hard to believe, in just a couple of weeks, all of our kiddos are back in school. And right now it looks like, just at least here in the greater Kansas City area, I think right now it looks like all the school districts are going back in person. There are also opportunities that some families can choose to have virtual learning still, but I think for the whole, many of our families, many of our participants will be going back to actually in-person learning, which for me, I'm extremely happy about, for my family. But I think we've got a lot of challenges I think we need to talk through in preparing for that, especially with our individuals with special needs. So first, I'd like to just kind of throw that out. How coming back to school, especially for our kids who have been virtual for the last year and a half, what are some things that we can do as parents in preparing our kids to get back into the school, preparing for behaviors, preparing for those transitions? Many kids may be in completely new schools because we've now, gotten old enough. They may have gone from from elementary to high school, or middle school to high school. So there may be a lot of changes for our kids. What are some things that we can do to help prepare them for this transition?
Christina, do you want to start?
And get.
Yeah, one thing that we have been working on this summer is we've been trying to do schoolwork every single day. And as we're approaching the time that school is starting, we've already started earlier bedtimes. I know we've been really lax in our house with times that we're going to bed, times that we're waking up, but we're already trying to get into that schedule to start building that routine now, even though we're a couple of weeks out for school. And also just talking about frequently the schedule that they're going to be having, the things that they're going to be doing each day, who they'll be seeing, that they'll have a new teacher. My kiddo who has special needs has been virtual all year. So this will be the first time he will be back in the elementary school in almost a year and a half. So it's constantly going over how it's going to be, how we're going to be eating lunch at school again, how we're going to be going to PE, who our teachers are going to be. He has siblings that will be there, what they will be doing. They will also be in school with him, knowing that that is there, I think provides a little bit of comfort, fortunately, but just talking about things every day leading up and preparedness for that return. Also, I've already been reaching out to our administration, to our different staff members that we have interacted with pre-COVID and during COVID and the past school year, already reaching out and talking about the expectations, the things that we're probably going to be seeing. Doc and I had talked about behaviors that we may be seeing as we return to school, since it will be something brand new, even though they may be familiar with it, but it will be something brand new still. So just already reaching out to them, finding out how we're needing to meet ahead of time, making sure that the first day of school, first week of school, first month of school is a really, really positive one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christina. I think practicing and rehearsing and even role playing some of the things that might be bringing your individual students a sense of unease or anxiety is very important. In communication with the school team, if it hasn't been offered already, oftentimes if you request an opportunity to do a tour, schools are willing to either do a guided tour or even allow you into the school at a certain time before everything goes live, so that you can walk. One of my students with special needs is in middle school, and even though she was virtual, in-person, hybrid, and then went back to in-person towards the end of school year, they did not want students to use lockers. So they had to carry everything around, because congregating around lockers was really difficult to enforce social distancing. And this coming school year, they've decided everything will be in person and that students can use lockers again. So she's starting her second year of middle school, with the whole locker business and the fact that there's a combination and a code and everything is producing a lot of anxiety for her. So we're working with the team at the school to find a day that would be convenient for everybody, with the least amount of other distractions, for her to just practice. Fortunately, she already knows the layout of the school, because we did practice that, before we went back from virtual into in-person, but this added thing of lockers. So I guess it doesn't need to necessarily be an activity or topic that is strictly academic in nature for your students. It could be something just as mechanical as, how am I going to find all of my classes? How am I going to open my locker? Where am I going to sit at lunch? Things like that. And so as much as you can tease out from your student the things that are that they're wondering about, and address those head on yourself at home through the role play we're talking about, and storyboarding, or even just contacting the team and seeing what can be done lifetime in the school setting itself before school starts, often helps aid in that making that transition as smooth as possible. Well, something else that comes to mind about transition back to in-person, in addition to the things that we've talked about, I think, at least for a number of my clients and my own students in the home with significant needs, a lot of the social interaction is creating a lot of anxiety and unknowns. For all of us, we've been at home for some period of time, and socialization is something that for a lot of the students in my home is uncomfortable to begin with. And they've been out of practice because we've been in lockdown. So I think it's also important to help to remind them in whatever strategies you found successful at home or whatever strategies they've used at school, to start reminding your students what those are, what they look like, what their options are available to them. If you don't already have them set up, work with the team at school to set them up for breaks. One of my other students in the home has a significant need for when she gets into sensory overload, or when she just becomes overwhelmed. And many times it's not because of anything that is strictly academic. It's purely about the stress that she has and her difficulty in processing a lot of input from a social emotional perspective. And so we've already started discussions about how it is she can prepare herself by reminding her where she can go when she needs a break, what tools she has for her breathing, for her journaling, and some of the other things that help her be successful from a social emotional perspective as well.
So I was going to say, preparedness wise, like we were talking about working with the team at school, we've also been doing things simply as just going to the school when there's no one there, and looking at the front door where we do drop off at, where we do pick up at, while there's not all the crazy groups of people out there. So they're very, very comfortable and very familiar with that system. They've changed things a little bit since he was there before, and there's a different type of system that they're using. So we've been discussing that and just going in person to start processing that for him as well.
I would also add that it's possible. Again, we can't underscore enough how important it is for communicating early and often with the team at school. The students in my home right now, presently, their needs aren't this significant anymore. But at one point in time, even before COVID, some of my students really needed the ability to transition to full-time in person. And one thing that COVID has enabled society to realize is just how much we can do virtually. And so, if you have a student for whom maybe going to school the full time, all 5 days of the week, from ring of bell in the beginning of the day to dismissal at end of the day may be too much. I'm sure that our schools and the different schools we've attended, and we've attended in different states, are not unique in that they are able to offer some transition to what would be a full schedule for students, so that they don't have to flip that switch and do it all at once. So if that has something that you haven't explored yet, I would encourage you to do that. If you have a student for whom, maybe that's just too much to swallow a full time all at once up front, to do a phase-in plan of some sort up to full time, if that is realistic and practicable for your district.
Yeah, and guys, I apologize. I'm having major technical difficulties on my computer, so thank you for continuing going with things. One of the things you had mentioned earlier, Eileen, was doing the stories and that, and I just wanted to. If you already talked about this, fantastic. I'm sorry, but one of the things that we can do great in helping prepare our kids are creating social stories, for them and preparing them for school, helping go through that process. And that's something I would start now for them as school starts in 2 or 3 weeks. Just kind of going over that social story, helping them, especially if they're going to be going to in the next couple of weeks. You can actually go take pictures of everything so you can be prepared for that.
Yes. We did talk just a little bit about that, Doc, but you're elaborating on that is very helpful. Again, I think the common theme is that we're touching on here is all centered around trying to practice and rehearse as much as possible I think my students often find it's just everything is a lot more palatable when they have the scenarios already worked through in their mind again and again and in different ways. And so that repetition of practicing and rehearsing seems to really help, ease the transition.
We have a set of books also at home that is happy, sad, angry, confused, and they're all stories, and we review those frequently of the appropriate way to react when we feel a certain way. Those are always great options, and those can be, if you're unable to find them right now with shipping and things, it's sometimes difficult to find things like that, but they're super easy to make at home as well. Some construction paper and photos and things like that are super easy to utilize and to be able to use to your advantage to help them with that transitions as well.
Yeah, so, we've talked now a little bit about getting ready to go back to school. Let's shift now to one of the big concerns, IEPs and how to work through them. And knowing that most IEPs are going to have to start over from scratch, we may even have to back up. Why don't we just kind of go back to basics and do like IEP 101s to kind of help our families understand, one, how they can be an advocate in the IEP process, but also understand that it's a partnership. We're not alone. And we need to partner with the teachers and the rest of the IEP team.
Certainly. Well, that gives me pause to consider whether some of the viewers of this program already have an IEP established or they do not. I think for those that are thinking perhaps maybe their student would benefit from one and they aren't sure, I would encourage you to reach out to SOAR, reach out to Advocate at Heart, look at the public domain literature that's available to understand. But for here and now, know that the impact on a student's ability to learn, this is not strictly IEPs. You're not IEP eligible just strictly because you have a diagnosis, and by the same token, you're not eligible for an IEP strictly on the basis of, you have good grades, so why do you need one? Understanding the basis for what triggers the eligibility for an IEP is very important. At a very high level, I can say that student who is struggling for whatever reasons to be able to attend to learning and to perform at their optimal level may be eligible for a special education plan or a 504 plan. And so I think there's a lot of misinformation, rumors out there about where some families might be feeling, well, I'm not sure my student would be eligible. One of my students who has an IEP has exceptional grades and always has, but he's twice exceptional. He's both gifted and he has special needs. So many of his inroads to eligibility for IEP were centered around behavioral issues, starting in kindergarten. He had some fine motor and some other things that would cause him to shut down. And when he shut down in the classroom, he was in the fetal position under his desk, or his desk was always all over the floor. The contents of the desk were always all over the floor. He had difficulty putting the brakes on socially and interactively when it was recess and it's time to go back and do actual schoolwork. There were a lot of things that the school just didn't really understand how to handle and manage, and what seemed like behavioral issues were exactly the triggers that led him to his eligibility for an IEP. But in the beginning, there were a couple of things that I will share here in case any of the listeners, this may apply to you. At that time, initially, we were in a private school setting, and this was in California. And when I contacted the school district and said I wanted an assessment, they said, your student is not one of our students, meaning he's not a public school student. And it's only because I had other parent advocates coach me ahead of time that I knew that no, all students, if you pay taxes in the area, your student is entitled to an assessment at the school district's expense. It's already paid for by the taxes you pay. And the other thing is going through the process initially, your student is eligible to be assessed in at least, I think it's upwards of 7 different categories. And they are not academic based. So, there's social, emotional, behavioral focus, different areas that would affect their ability to attend school. And initially, the district there unfortunately only assessed him in a couple of areas. When those areas he did well. When I learned there were other areas he could be assessed in, he didn't do so well. And then he ended up being eligible. So these are some of the touch points that I think lead to some of the rumors that, oh, well, then my student's not eligible. Or even an answer from, in my case, it was the principal at what would have been our districted school if he had gone to public school, telling me you're not eligible, and my not taking no for an answer because fortunately other parents had coached me better. Otherwise, we tend to receive a response like that from an administrator in the education setting, and we feel as though, well, they must know what they're talking about, and we walk away. You just need to understand and know better than others what the basic eligibility and criteria are for you to pursue rights for your child. I think I'll stop with that because that was a high kind of hodgepodge of different things, but at least I'll encapsulate it by saying my comments are really unique to those of you who might be listening to this and are on the fence about or have wanted to pursue but weren't sure if your student was eligible. So I don't know, Doc, Christina, maybe you want to chime in on some pointers for families who already have IEPs, what to do in this this day and age post-COVID.
Yeah, Eileen, I think that's such a wonderful starting point because there are so many people, like you're saying, parents that think that their child might not be able to receive an IEP or a 504, so they just don't pursue it. And I've always told parents again and again, advocate, 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 because you are your child's best advocate. There are so many different ways that children can qualify for different services within the school district. And like you're saying, they may be extremely gifted, but still require some assistance, whether it be with speech or OT or processing or sensory. There's so many different areas that they can receive services, whether it be they're distracted in the classroom and just need to be in a quiet area to take a test. Very, very just multitudes of different ways that IEPs and 504s can come into play. And another thing that I always like to remind parents of, an IEP isn't just once a year. If you're seeing something, especially as we're coming back from a very different and somewhat challenging school year, your child may start out doing things one way and need adaptations a month in or 6 weeks in or 3 months in. And you can always contact your team and ask for a meeting or an evaluation to make sure that the child's success is always being met. Sometimes even, especially if you're already have an IEP and so you have a great team that you're already in contact with, possibly doing an IEP meeting, even though you're not due one, within the first month of school to ensure that there are great accommodations already being put into place, maybe even before school starts, because you've seen over the last year that your child has is needing more help with small motor or with large motor or with speech, or they've developed a new and different need, and that needs to be addressed and make sure that that gets put into place before school starts or at the very beginning of the school year so that they can have a really successful start. And then when your IEP does come up, your annual meeting, just making sure that you are ready and prepared for it and know everything that you want to bring to light in the meeting. A lot of team members may really be focused on the academic and wanting to work just towards those goals, but there may be other goals that you're really wanting to see incorporated into that IEP or that 504 so that the best results can come and the most success can come, and making sure that those topics are addressed and put into a plan. Because it kind of like any other type of situation, one person may see the child needing assistance in one area and thriving in another, and another person may see a thriving situation in one area and need in another. So coming together as that full team, and as a parent advocating for something that may not be there according to the team, is key.
And part and parcel of the whole team, as we keep talking and emphasizing and pounding on that issue so much, but it is so important. A couple of thoughts about that. One is sometimes students can be on the surface appearing to do decent and fairly well at school, but they're completely falling apart at home, or the other way around, or some combination. And so never underestimate, as Christina said, you are your child's best advocate. You're also the only one who, besides the child, the student themselves, who is an expert in what it is that they need. So don't second guess that. Stay true to that, and try to steer clear from the little voice in your head that might say you don't want to be that parent, Nobody has ever gone down in history negatively because they pursued the right thing out of virtue in a respectful way with the team on behalf of their child. So stay true to that, but recognize that part of the team also means that you have a perspective that nobody else has, and that is how the student is outside of the classroom. So for some students, it's taking everything out of them to be able to hold it together during the school day, and they completely lose it when they get home. And this had happened with one of my students who reached a critical mass where she just wouldn't get out of bed in the morning to go to school. In her elementary school days, I couldn't get her out of the car during carpool. And so there were a lot of symptoms that were happening at home that the team at school didn't know about. And I didn't have the maturity and experience enough to make the connection that what was happening at home was an equally important part of what is happening at the school day, to be able to head that off. We were able to fix it in the end because I had to come forth, call an IEP meeting outside of our annual scheduled one to say, I need some help. I don't really know what to do about this. And we then developed some strategies where the student was able to have some check-ins during the day. Some members of the team were checking in with her. We identified with what some of her triggers are for it to send her to that point of stress, and remove some of it, so she's able to unpack some of it during the day, so that when she got home, she didn't have such depleted reserve to get through homework and then try to get psyched up to go to school the next day. And then at carpool, we had a triage where she didn't have to go right to the classroom. She went to another place where there was a one-on-one member of the team who could just take her temperature for the day. And if she was nervous about a test, or she was confused how to get from A to Z because some of her executive function deficits were in the way of completing a big project, they were able, because we had more opportunities during her school day, to figure out what those were and do something about it. And then that could translate into how we handled things at home, and how we handled things at home was being translated to the school even in as much detail as, hey, I would call and say, we're having one of those mornings, and somebody would meet her at carpool and help her get out of the car and implement what we had planned. So that's something I wanted to punctuate. And then the second point about team is the student. The student is a valuable, in to say valuable is under statement, member of the team. And not every district and team within a district, every team within the district is different, aren't always including students before they reach transition age. And I would just say, as a champion for your child, if your student isn't already involved and you feel that they would add value, they have a desire to, they should be involved in their own IEPs. If they're able to talk, they're able to add value, whether they're able to talk verbally or non-verbally in some other way. They have a way to communicate what their needs are, and you know what those are, as you're the parent and you're their best champion and their best expert. And oftentimes when they are involved in the process, ends up being something that is much easier for them to get behind and embrace, than just having to go through the motions. And I've seen that done. It was not at my request. It was at the request of a member of the elementary team for one of my other students. And I never would have thought, I mean, if we were preparing to transition someone from youth into adulthood for high school transition, there's something built into the law for that. At a certain age and a certain grade, they're supposed to begin to be involved. But ever since I had that team member at the elementary school introduce the idea of inviting the student to the meeting, even go so far as to have them articulate, these are what my strengths are. This is what I want to see myself be able to do this year. These are my triggers. So many times our students know what they want and need better than we do. And we're just not always on a routine basis invoking their input. And we need to, whatever level, whatever capacity and ability the student has to do that, I believe they should be given the opportunity to. And so if they're not, I would encourage all the parents listening to promote that.
I think, like you're saying, with the consistency is so key with your team at school and with home. For sure, there may be things obviously that you're not seeing while the child is at school, and they're having success with it. And then they get home at night and have homework in a specific area, and they're really struggling to get through it because you're doing it a different way than what they were doing at school. That's one thing that's been really eye-opening this past year, seeing the way that things are taught and then being able to utilize those and then adapt it to work with my son to make sure that he understands things better. If you're struggling at home with a content area, just being open and really transparent with the school and say, okay, I know that you are saying that he's doing super well with that. What are you all doing? Or obviously with COVID, it's very difficult, but previously and hopefully soon in the future again, there's the openness of coming in the classroom, being able to observe, seeing how they're doing things so you can incorporate that at home, and vice versa. If they're struggling with something at school, but at home they're able to do that thing very, very well, communicating with how you're doing that at home. If it's, having a fidget, having something going on, having a snack before they're doing something, needing a 2-minute break between one activity and another activity, just providing that consistency so they have success all around in every way that they can.
Some of what you were saying, Christina, brought back to my mind consistency, and then another C word, creativity. So just a couple of quick examples to drive the point home. One is sometimes our students are struggling to manage, and sometimes it comes across symptomatically in the form of a behavior an undesirable behavior or otherwise. But a lot of times the trigger can be, as you were saying, Christina, a challenging assignment of some kind. I think as parents, I just like to champion that we all have the freedom to be as creative as possible as we need to. I think as long as a student is still learning what subject is being taught, the manner in which they perform the homework or they take the test can be different. So one example of that was a geography assignment, and it was just too many parts at one time. So we all know the experience of having to learn the state capitals. Well, my student was expected to learn the state capitals, figure out where they are on the map, and then from a word bank that listed the capitals matched the capital to the right state. And she was failing miserably, and she was beside herself as she wanted to be successful. And so this was spilling over into other areas of her day because she couldn't get off of, she was stuck on this. And so when the team got together and we started looking at everything, I said, would you please just send me the assignment, the activity? And I got to thinking about this was really too much for her to organize by herself, and she needed some help to chunk it up. So I asked the team if it would be okay if we had the location placement on the map as one separate activity, and identifying and actually matching the state capitals to the states themselves could be a different activity. And I tested this with flashcards at home that we made, and she was nailing everything 100%. So she was so frustrated to say, I know this information, so why can't I perform this? Well, knowing what I know about her challenges and her tendency to shut down when from an ordering of events, she just couldn't do it. But when we showed her a way she could, the team was fine with that. And so she ended up taking the final test in a resource room where she could take her time, because that's another thing that would get her all worked up, and then she couldn't perform. And she was able to do it compartmentally. So she was still demonstrating she knew her state capitals, but she didn't have to do it in this way that was multi-stepped and multi-layered that didn't fit her capacity at that time. So that's something, being creative is usually something the team would be willing to embrace, and you might have to yourself rack your brain about what solution is there, but don't be shy about it. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is they could say no, but the best thing that could happen is your student could achieve some success, and they might actually be able to demonstrate how much they know, because I think a lot of times that's where their frustration comes from. Nobody understands me. Nobody understands I can compute the problems in math. I just have a struggle with the process order of the steps. So the second thing I wanted to say about that was, with homework. One of my students has just the whole sheer mass of things. So I've got, 20 different things going on for 8 different subjects, and, he would just shut down. And so I thought, well, it's a long shot, but I'm gonna ask the team if we can maybe pare down the volume of homework that he's required to do. So if there were 20 math problems, maybe he only has to do the odd number ones. And, at first I negative talked myself out of even proposing it, because I thought, oh, well, they're going to think we're trying to cut him a break, giving me excuses to be lazy or get out of work or whatever. But in reality, the team embraced it, and they said, volume is really not that important to us as an education team. We're really more concerned with making sure the students learn the concepts and they're able to apply them. So whether a student does 20 problems or they do 10 is really not the point. And I thought, well, then why didn't I propose it sooner? So whether it's a fewer number of problems or some other paring down of assignments for homework, that can be tantamount to your students' sanity and success, and how well they're able to achieve success also translates to their enthusiasm to keep doing it every day. And for some of us, after school is not just about getting homework done. A lot of us have therapies, we have medical appointments, we have a lot of other demands on our schedules and on our students that, some of this really comes down to, okay, if we're going to have to pare something down somewhere, then sometimes the answer is right under our nose in the form of just reducing the volume of the actual work that's expected.
Right. I think you brought out a really good point, and I want to kind of reiterate it, that it's also okay to say no. When your team is proposing that something be done and you know that it's not going to be something that's going to work well with your student, saying no is okay. Especially with so many returning this year. When they last saw your student, it may have been a year and a half ago, and things may have changed significantly, and they're going off of the things that they knew worked a year and a half ago, but it may be different now. So saying no is totally fine, and saying no, this is probably not going to work, you should try this, and giving them other avenues of things to do, like you're saying, being creative and thinking out of the box together as a team, or saying, let's start out utilizing what's been working at home for my student right now. And then if we need to change that in a week or a month, then we can go about that way. But it is always okay to say no as well when you're in meeting with a team. Which I think some parents are fearful of doing, and saying, oh, well, I'm telling these professionals that specialize in these specific areas that they're not doing their job correctly. It's not that. It's just that your students so well, and you know what will work and what won't, and it may have changed since they've been with them last.
That's so true.
And it's also okay, I love that point, Christina, and it's also okay to ask for a trial. Well, can we try this for 2 to 4 weeks? Let's see if this would work. And maybe it won't work. But I think most of the time, in my experience, when you work with a team, when you say, well, let's try this and reevaluate in 4 weeks and see if it was beneficial. And most of the time, when you try it that way, again, you're showing the team you want to be partner with them, you want to work together with them. You're not telling them what to do. You're saying, hey, can we try this? If it doesn't work, okay, we tried it, we'll move on. It's amazing how many times it actually works. And whenever I've done that with a team, I've never had the team tell me, no, we're not going to try it. Because bottom line, and this is something that parents all the time forget in IEP meetings, the other people across the table, they really do care for your child. And they also want the best for your child. You are the biggest advocate for them, but they care for your child too. And so it truly is a team effort, and you're just one of the team, but absolutely suggest and do everything you can for them. We are coming up near the top of the hour now, as we get just about 10 more minutes here. Anything else with IEPs, or any other things that we want to just touch on in preparing our kids, preparing ourselves? We need some preparation getting back to school too, with things, getting back in the routine, learning things. And we still know what everything's going to be like for school this year. Personally, I think we're going to end up hearing a lot of the school districts make decisions that everyone's going to be in masks. I think we're going to have the entire country back in masks within a month or so. So we need to. I think it would be wise that we start preparing everyone for masks again too, just to be ready for that. Especially our littles, our youngers in elementary who haven't been eligible for vaccines or that. But what else can we do in just preparing ourselves as parents for the school year?
It's tricky for me to figure out where to begin with that. I'll start with what we began today's discussion with about practicing. So for my kiddos, it seems to really help a lot if I present the idea to them now that there's a possibility we might be going back to a mask requirement, that there's a good chance we might be going to virtual again, because that gives them a chance to at least embrace the idea. Whether they embrace it or not, at least they've been exposed to it. So in the inevitability that that happens, it's not as big of a shock, and then the corresponding transition seems to go a little bit better. As Christina touched on already earlier today, we also have been going through the change in sleep schedules, kind of getting, one of my students, she feels better if she can practice unpacking and packing her backpack again and again. So as soon as, fortunately, her school offered the school supply box option. So when her box arrived, I was surprised how quickly she started doing that. But hey, that helps her feel more prepared, then that's what she's doing. I don't know about other parents here, but for me, self-care and trying to keep myself fortified and with a positive attitude is a struggle at best. But I'm already trying to prepare myself for, and I work outside the home. So this is something I need to process with where I can schedule meetings and I have that authority. I'm trying to make sure my schedule is pretty as low key as possible for the first 2 months. It takes at least 2, sometimes 3 months for my oldest to really start to get into the rhythm of school. So I'm also trying to make sure that any appointments outside of work, with doctors and dentists and all those things are kept to a minimum. My students are not involved in anything extracurricularly that doesn't already take place on campus during school hours. So case in point, they're in band and performing arts. So we don't have the sports thing going on. I know there are a lot of active sports families out there might be participating today. So you might be limited in how much you can pare down your schedule. But I think as much as I'm able to keep it all about just going to school and coming home, the better. So we don't have trips planned. And I don't know, that's just my strategy, because I feel as though the more I have on my plate already, it's easier for me to spill my plate than it is to have my plate as free and open as possible. So if things go swimmingly and there isn't any kind of crisis that needs to be addressed, then great, I've got a plate to fill. But if it is, then I'm not going to be spilling over already before the crisis even comes. So that's something, if you aren't already connected with prayer warriors, with other parent warriors who understand because they've walked a mile in your shoes with kids with disabilities, then please utilize SOAR, utilize other resources in your community to connect with other parents, because I don't know how many years, my youngest is now 12, but my oldest is 18. How many years I went along just frustrated and feeling defeated, like I must just be making a mountain out of a molehill because the other parents I was talking to didn't understand. And until I got connected with other special needs parents who could finish my sentences for me, and they had solutions, and I wasn't just crazy. This was not all just what everyone said. Oh, he's a boy, that's why he can't sit still in his chair. And I'm like, but it's more than that. To actually have other families, parents that you can connect with is so vital to your own lifeline. And we all need a reminder that if you aren't putting your own oxygen mask on first, you can't possibly achieve success and be the best you can be for your kids. So do make sure you have your lifeline. And if you don't, any one of us here on the panel today is happy to try to connect you wherever you are in the country or the world for that matter. So those are just some of the things that, for starters, come to my mind when you ask that question, Doc.
Yeah, that's great.
I think what Doc touched on and Eileen both touched on, things that I hadn't thought of is, even if we are able to stay in person the whole year, there are days, at least in our school district, where the kids are going to have half days, but they're going to be remote. They're not going to be in person. So preparing the kids and yourself schedule wise for situations of those types, if we end up with a half day, but it is remote, and that's a change in their schedule, instead of being in person, but they're still doing school at home, but then they're going to go back to in person then the following week or something, helping them to prepare for that type of a situation, as well as our, as parents, schedules, preparing for that, preparing for the differences that may come along, so that your plate or cup doesn't overflow because you have some behaviors now to deal with because of this change in schedule all of a sudden. Just preparedness that way. And I can't stress enough, like Eileen did, is having a community where you have other parents of special needs kiddos that you can call on. Like Eileen was talking about the ages of hers. And then I'm much more comfortable with the youngers because I've been through those steps and those processes of starting preschool, starting kindergarten, things like that. But the transitions to high school and middle school isn't something that I have personally dealt with. I've dealt with other families doing that, but don't have the firsthand experience. So definitely community as a parent, as we prepare for this, that is huge. Being able to have those that you can call on, and those or other people that can call on you and say, hey, we're dealing with this situation. Have you ever gone through this? Do you have time to talk about it? Things like that. Just to have that community and those others that have been in your shoes that can help to support as you move forward and start a school year and process through the school year.
All right, well, we are at the top of the hour here. You know, as always, our time flies when we talk on things. Let me just kind of give a couple of updates on things to come, and then I'll just come back to each of you if you want to just kind of give a parting shot that you'd like to leave everyone with as we leave. But I want to leave everyone with updates for the things coming up for SOAR. First off, our next Talk with Doc will be back in a few weeks on August the 20th. Will be our next one. And that will be a Wonderfully Made preview. The Wonderfully Made conference, we are actually launching registration for that next week. And so be sure to watch for that. It'll be in October. We're doing both in-person and virtual conferences. So in-person conference in Kansas City, and then the week following will be a week-long virtual conference. We have different talks for both conferences. We've got over one of our keynote speakers, in fact, is from Kenya, Africa, for our virtual one of our partners. I'm very excited for and can't wait for you to hear. So please be watching that. We've got tracks for both families with special needs, as well as any organizations and ministries who work with special needs. So please be watching that. And then anyone in the greater Kansas City area, we've got our next respite night coming up in August 28th. It'll be in Paola. But the other thing I am super excited about, we have SOAR with Someone Special. It is our special needs prom for parents and caregivers and their child. So a great opportunity where you can go to a prom with your child and just have a great evening where we can celebrate you. It'll be August the 21st from 6:30 to 8:30. You can go to our website, soarspecialneeds.org, to sign up and register for that. We have limited spots, so please sign up today so you can make sure you can be a part of that. So make sure to go to our website to check out all of our other events that we've got going on. You don't want to miss out on those. And as always, if you'd like to help participate and partner with us to be able to allow us to continue with this, you can do that obviously through financial support, and go to soarspecialneeds.org/donate to help with that. But before we leave, let me just go back to Christina with any parting shots you have as we leave our parents today. Christina, why don't you go first?
Just again, advocate. That's always my key word when anyone ever asks me about how do I do this on an IEP, or how do I do this, or how do I start my child out successful. It's just avocation. You're your child's best advocate. You know them the best, and it needs to be you that helps them to be the most successful person that they can be.
Absolutely. Eileen.
And yes, I would just say, trust your gut. Don't go it alone. We're all here for you. So don't be a stranger. Don't leave it to chance. Just err on the side of reaching out, even if you're not sure you need to. And, try to make the most of it. The struggles are during the times when we all come out stronger. We just don't know that at the time. So whatever's coming, let's embrace it and make the most of it, knowing that we together can get through it stronger than we can alone. So here's to a great school year.
Yeah.
That's right. So again, everybody, I'd say let's not look at all the bad things that can happen this year. Let's change our perspective, look at the positives, and let's help our kids have an amazing year. Let's be their advocate. Let's be their biggest cheerleader. Let's support our teachers. Our teachers do an amazing job, and they just don't get the credit for that. And as we all learned when we all of a sudden got all of our kids back home, we learned this, over the past 18 months, just how difficult it is to be a teacher. So make sure you tell the teachers thank you for all the love and support they do for our kids. So with that, thank you for everyone joining us. Look forward to having you with us next time. But always remember, come soar with us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.